Now we are going to be studying elasticity of demand and supply and how it is applied in business decision and decision making. Every organization must strategize when it comes to increasing price, reducing price, or maintaining prices. Therefore, at the end of this lesson, students should be able to define elasticity and elasticity of demand as well as supply, identify the different types, make necessary calculations, and be able to graphically illustrate. And also must be able to apply the concept when it comes to decision making in businesses and in organizations. Let's first define elasticity. Elasticity measures change in one variable as a result of changing another variable. Therefore, elasticity of demand measures the degree of responsiveness of change in quantity demanded to how price changes, how income changes, as well as price of other commodities. Therefore, it is a measure of how the consumers react when price changes. Now we have the types of elasticity of demand: price elasticity of demand, income elasticity of demand, and cross elasticity of demand. We are going to pick this one after the other, and then we are going to explain briefly. Price elasticity of demand. This measures the degree of responsiveness of change in quantity demanded to change in price. And it can be expressed as percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price. There are some determinants of elasticity of demand. One is the number of substitutes available in the market. The more the substitutes, the more buyers are willing to opt for other products of such type if a manager or a company increases the price. So, number of substitutes will determine whether an organization will increase the price or let the price be in order to ensure increase in sales. Degree of necessity, price of the good as a proportion of income, and time or. Let's look at this example together. 20% change in quantity demanded is as a result of 25% change in price. Price elasticity of demand coefficient can easily be calculated as percentage change in quantity demanded, which is 20%, over percentage change in price, which is 25%. And then the coefficient is obtained. Now, there are different methods of calculating elasticity of demand, but I'm using the percentage method because it is straightforward. Most students are familiar with them. Now, in your books, there are other methods that have been explained there. You can also read them for further clarification. Now, if the price of a fridge is currently 200 pula and the quantity demanded is 4 million, if the price falls to 180 pula and the quantity demanded rises to 6 million, now what is the price elasticity of demand? We can also use a percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price. That is, we can use the percentage method. Now, this percentage method can also be further broken down into Q2 minus Q1 over Q1 times 100 in order for us to obtain the first percentage change of quantity. Everything over P2 minus P1 over P1 times 100 in order to obtain the percentage change in price. Because some questions can demand you to solve the percentage change in quantity demanded first, and marks will be awarded for that, and then for you to solve the percentage change in price next, before you now solve the coefficient. Also, as managers, sometimes we want to measure that degree of elasticity by looking at the percentage change in each variable differently. So this method is a bit straightforward, and most students are familiar with this method. So with this method, If you follow that formula, then you are able to calculate and estimate price elasticity of demand. But mind you, when you calculate price elasticity of demand, the coefficients cannot just be left like that. They have to be interpreted. And that is where the application of elasticity of demand comes in when it comes to managerial decisions. Now, we want to interpret the coefficient of price elasticity of demand in 5 different ways. And these are what we refer to as the degrees of price elasticity of demand. The first one we can have is fairly elastic demand, where the coefficient is greater than 1. And this is a situation in which a small change in price leads to a more than proportional change in quantity demanded. Now, from the graph that you are looking at right now, you will see that the gap between P1 and P2 is not as wide as the gap between Q1 and Q2. A situation like this is called a fairly elastic demand. So when you solve a problem and you interpret your answer, once it is greater than 1, then that degree of elasticity is referred to as fairly elastic. Fairly and inelastic demand is the opposite of the first one that we have just discussed, where the coefficient of elasticity is less than 1. And from the graph that you have in front of you right now, you will see that the distance between P1 and P2 is wider than that of Q1 and Q2. So fairly inelastic demand is a situation whereby a large change in price leads to a small change in quantity demanded. Unitary elastic demand ensures or entails coefficient of elasticity of demand to be equal to 1. By implication, a proportional change in quantity in price leads to the same proportional change in quantity demanded. And that is why you can see that the distance between P1 and P2 is and distance between Q1 and Q2 are the same. So when you have a figure, for example, if there is 10% change in price and it leads to 10% change in quantity demanded, then your elasticity of demand is going to be unitary, which is going to be 1. Elasticity of demand also can present itself as perfectly elastic or infinitely elastic demand, where irrespective of changes in quantity demanded, price remains the same. Or perfectly inelastic demand is a situation whereby irrespective of the changes in price, quantity does not change. And this kind of elasticity of demand is equal to 0. So these are different ways we can interpret the result of price elasticity of demand. There are other methods, like I mentioned before, of calculating elasticity of demand: the arc method, the point method, the total outlay method. When you refer to your books, you'll be able to understand more on this concept. But I implore you that you get enough knowledge and stick to the method that you are most comfortable with for the purpose of this teaching. When you're interpreting price elasticity of demand, always remember that a change in price means a change in quantity in the opposite direction. It means price elasticity of demand will always be negative because there is that inverse relationship or negative relationship. So it will definitely carry a negative number, which is permitted to be dropped or to be ignored when you are interpreting the answer. So in other words, do not apply the negative sign. It is not relevant in interpreting your answer. It is only depicting that as one increases, the other decreases. Income elasticity of demand. This measures the degree of responsiveness of change in quantity demanded to change in income. Using the percentage method, it can be expressed as Q2 minus Q1 over Q1, everything over Y2 minus Y1 over Y1, where the Y2 is the new income and the Y1 is the old income. And the Q2 is the new quantity and the Q1 is the old quantity. So when you are given figures and from the note you have also been given, you can use that simple method to estimate income elasticity of demand. In interpreting income elasticity of demand, the coefficient can carry a positive sign or a negative sign. When it carries a positive sign, it is a normal good, of which its variance can be necessary good, of which its coefficient can be less than 1, or luxurious good when the coefficient is greater than 1 but still negative. Now, the coefficient can also be negative if it is an inferior good. And it is important and pertinent for us to note at this point that inferior goods are relative. For example, chicken feet, mopani worms. To some people, they are inferior, but to others, they are nutritious delicacies. So the type of inferior good does not really affect your own interpretation. What matters is your coefficient, the signs, and the application of the income elasticity of demand. The income elasticity of demand is simply expressing what will happen to quantities that individuals will buy when the money at hand changes. So when the money at hand increases and the good is a normal good like rice, toothpaste, individuals are motivated to purchase more of that. But when the money at hand increases, but the good is an inferior good to such a consumer is motivated to buy better product and less of such an inferior good. Cross elasticity of demand measures the degree of responsiveness of change in one commodity to change in the price of another. Therefore, in price elasticity of demand, two commodities are in question, commodity A and commodity B. But when we are applying the formula and we are solving the questions, we are going to adopt quantity of one and price of the other. Now, using the percentage formula, we have the percentage change in quantity demanded of good X over percentage change in the price of good Y. By implication, we have the change in quantity demanded of X over original quantity of X, everything over change in the price of Y over original price of Y. Still the same formula for price for percentage method that we used in price elasticity of demand. By the time you solve this question using this method, you are going to obtain your answer, which will also be either in positive or negative. When you are interpreting cross elasticity of demand, substitute goods carry positive signs. Pampers and huggies, closeup and dentoclean. These are examples of substitute goods. But complementary goods carry negative signs, such as bread and butter, ink and pen, stove and paraffins. Supplementary goods are goods you cannot use one without the other, whereas substitute goods are goods of which there are options when the price of one increases. So when a manager is curious about price increase, he or she should use this formula, make estimates, and be able to determine which product he or she is going to increase its price. That will preserve the sales, increase the profit, and ensure generation of revenue. Elasticity of supply measures the degree of responsiveness of change in quantity supplied to change in price, similar to elasticity of demand. I have used percentage method also. I've expressed it in form of this light formula. You can also read your notes for further clarification. We have different determinants of elasticity of supply, spare capacity, stocks, ease of factor substitution, time period. Degree of elasticity of supply can also be interpreted as fairly elastic supply, where a small change in price leads to a large change in quantity supplied and the elasticity is greater than 1. Or fairly inelastic, where the coefficient is less than 1. Or unitary elastic supply, where the coefficient is equal to 1. In other words, managerial decisions are crucial, and businessmen must consider decisions to make per time, considering that the focus is profit generation, cost reduction, and overall revenue boost, and increase in sales in the market. Every businessman wants to retain customers, wants to retain market share. So there must be careful measures taken strategically when it comes to changing prices. Otherwise, such a company will find itself in Waterloo.